Welcome back to Skippers, presented by FanDuel Canada. Thank you to FanDuel for sponsoring this video. Make sure you guys download it today. It's the only sportsbook we use to bet on baseball, the Euro Cup, NHL, anything. So make sure you download FanDuel Canada. Today we'll be talking about the worst contracts for every single MLB team. Today we're going to be going into the American League, and then next week we'll be talking about the National League. I have 8 teams, I believe, and Avery has 7 teams. All right, first we're going to talk about the AL East. The first team is the Baltimore Orioles. The worst contract for this team. I know I could talk about Chris Davis, but I wanted to talk about Mark Trumbo. The last year before he signed this contract, he was an absolute freak. He had 256, 47 nukes, and 108 RBIs. This was easily career highs in every single category. So the Baltimore Orioles bought stock when it was at the highest value here for Mark Trumbo. The Orioles signed him to a 3-year, $37 million contract. Trumbo was terrible in this contract. In the 3 seasons here, he had a minus 0.6 F-WAR. Did not even accumulate 1 WAR during these 3 seasons with the Baltimore Orioles. He would also slug 40 home runs with just 112 RBIs in all of these 3 seasons, and he didn't even play the last season. He retired after 2019. Just a terrible, terrible contract here for the Baltimore Orioles, who didn't really have a sense of direction here. They had expiring contracts. They brought in Trumbo to kind of make a push, and they were just didn't make the playoffs and were really, really bad during these campaigns. The next team is the Boston Red Sox. There is tons and tons of bad contracts that this team has, but the one that takes the cake for me is Carl Crawford. After back-to-back All-Star seasons with the Tampa Bay Rays, the Red Sox signed him to a 7-year, $142 million contract. Crawford would then fall off a cliff in his first 2 seasons of this contract, accumulating just 0.3 F-WAR while hitting 260 with a 292 on-base percentage and the lowest OPS of his entire career at 711. Like I mentioned, this was a 7-year deal for Carl Crawford, and he only played 2 seasons in this contract before he got traded with Josh Beckett to the Dodgers for James Loney, Alan Webster, Ivan DeJesus, and 2 players to be named later, which would end up being Ruby De La Rosa and Jerry Sands. He was actually pretty decent with the Dodgers, which makes this deal look even worse for the Boston Red Sox, but a player signing for $142 million in a 7-year deal and only playing 2 of them will always be a terrible contract for the team, especially with what the Red Sox got back for Carl Crawford here. The next one is one I simply love to see because I hate the New York Yankees. It is Jacoby Ellsbury, 7 years, $153 million with the New York Yankees from the Boston Red Sox. This was one of the weirdest signings for the Yankees because Ellsbury only had 1 season where he had over 10 home runs. This season he hit 32, and the closest that he ever came besides his 32 home run season was 9. So he had a very big outlier here in his entire career, and the Yankees decided to buy high on Jacoby Ellsbury. Jacoby Ellsbury, before this tenure, was a career 297 hitter with the Red Sox and a 108 OPS plus. Many, like I mentioned, saw this as an overpay, and this would end up being the case. His first year as a Yankee was pretty good. He put up a 3.5 F-WAR with a weighted runs created plus above 100 on a mediocre Yankees team, but then he would go to fall off a cliff as he would not put over a 90 weighted runs created plus over the next 2 seasons and only accumulated only 2.9 F-WAR during this time. Like I mentioned earlier, it was a 7-year contract, and Jacoby Ellsbury only made it through 4 years of this contract before he would never play for the New York Yankees again, and ultimately his career would just be done right there. The next one is Tampa Bay Rays. This contract is currently going on right now, so it's kind of in limbo. We don't really have any idea what's going on. It is Wander Franco. He signed an 11-year, $182 million with the Tampa Bay Rays, $5 million signing bonus, and this was all guaranteed. Wander Franco came out of the gate hot in his rookie season. He hit 288, 127 OPS plus, finished 3rd in Rookie of the Year voting, and this contract was looking really, really good at this point, a bargain for the Tampa Bay Rays. In his 3rd season, and probably the last that he'll ever play in Major League Baseball, he set a career high in OPS, hit 17 home runs, stole 30 bases, and then the downfall of Wander Franco started. He was placed on administrative leave by Major League Baseball in March and has yet to step foot on a Major League Baseball field. There is obviously tons of stuff going on with Wander Franco, talking to minors, all of that type of stuff. I do not think he'll play a game in the majors ever again, which makes this deal look absolutely terrible for a team that rarely spends money in the Tampa Bay Rays. The next one is one that pisses me off to no end. It is the Toronto Blue Jays. It is Tanner Roark, who is my kryptonite, the worst to ever do it in Toronto Blue Jays uniform. He signed a 2-year, $24 million contract with the Toronto Blue Jays. Before this tenure with the Blue Jays, I'll be honest with you, I didn't really hate this signing. He was a great middle of the rotation arm. He was good for the Washington Nationals, .359 career career ERA, a top 10 finish in Cy Young voting one season, and then this dude just became an absolute pumpkin on the mound. Just one of the worst pitchers, and maybe in Toronto Blue Jays history. In his first season with the Blue Jays, he had a 6.8 ERA. A 6.8 ERA in 47 innings with a 1.7 whip. This was eyewash. This was terrible to watch. I couldn't believe they did this deal after it. And then the following season, he only pitched 7 innings, gave up 5 runs, and never threw a pitch in the majors ever again. So just to be clear, the Toronto Blue Jays paid $24 million for 54 innings of Tanner Roark and a sub 6.8 ERA. Just a terrible signing here for the Toronto Blue Jays. There's been tons, obviously, if you know. This clears. This is easily the worst one, especially of my lifetime for the Toronto Blue Jays. Now we'll go into the AL Central. We'll start off with the Chicago White Sox, who honestly don't have really that many bad contracts, but this one is very, very bad. It is Andrew Benintendi, 5 years, $75 million. During his entire career, Andrew Benintendi was an above-average hitter who could play stellar defense. He was a World Series champion, Gold Glove winner, Rookie of the Year runner-up, who was still in his mid-20s, so the White Sox kind of jumped the gun to sign him over the Yankees, who were looking to sign him after a pretty decent second half of the season with the Yankees when they traded for him at the trade deadline. In his last season before his contract, he had a 2.2 F4. In his 2 seasons with the White Sox, however, Andrew Benintendi has a negative 1.6 F4 and a weighted runs created plus below 70. This guy has been absolutely horrible for the Chicago White Sox. White Sox fans hate him. And to be honest, I don't really blame them. They signed him, and they are the worst team in baseball. He has not helped the slightest. He has been absolutely horrific for the Chicago White Sox. The next team is the Cleveland Guardians, and this is a guy that I kind of like, to be honest, because he's kind of electric. It's Nick Swisher, 4-year, $56 million. This guy was really good before this contract. People do forget that. He had 8 quality years with the Athletics and the Yankees, had a career 835 OPS, had 185 home runs. He signed with a Guardians team that had World Series aspirations after a terrible, terrible season the year before. This team that his first year of his contract, I believe the Guardians won 92 games and lost in the wild card. In his first season with the Indians, he was actually pretty good though. He was actually pretty good. He had a 115 OPS. However, he did hit the lowest amount of home runs of his career, but that would easily be his best season as an Indian, as he would end up playing only 127 games over the next 2 seasons, never eclipsing higher than a 608 OPS, and just hit 8 home runs in 2 seasons. So just a really bad way to finish his career with the Guardians. But Nick Swisher was awesome the 8 years before that. It just sucks what happened with the Guardians. Obviously tons of injury troubles, but yeah, this was one of the worst deals Guardians/Indians history. The last one I will be talking about before I cut it to Avery here is the Detroit Tigers, and you know what I'm going to say here. It is Javier Baez, 6 years, $140 million. This guy was a 2-time All-Star, MVP runner-up, Gold Glove winner, and inked a deal with the Tigers after a pretty good second half of the season with the Mets. He hit 300 in this time, 886 OPS, 9 home runs in just 47 games, and the Mets fans were dying to bring back Javier Baez. Thank God they didn't. This contract immediately became a disaster, as Baez would set career lows in almost every single offensive category while striking out at an insane clip, which is something that he obviously does. He's done his entire career, but he used to hit for average, so it was fine. During his tenure with the Tigers, Javier Baez has been horrific in the field, tons of errors, and even worse at the plate, as he owns a 607 OPS plus with 314 strikeouts in just 333 games. He is hitting at the bottom of the order. He doesn't even really play every day, I'm pretty sure, and Tigers fans hate this guy. Many may even argue right now, not named Anthony Rendon, this is easily the worst contract in baseball by a significant margin, because the Tigers have a very young team, decent prospects, and Javier Baez is a black hole in the lineup that they have to play because they paid him $140 million. Now we will cut it to Avery with the second half of this video. Thank you guys for tuning in. And like I said, next week I'll be back breaking down the National League in the first half. Maybe me and Avery will be at the panel together, so it'll be a little bit better. But thank you guys for watching.
Johnny has tagged me in here for the second half of this video, and I will start with the Kansas City Royals. Their worst contract, Omar Infante. They don't give out a ton of money to a ton of people, but this was a bad one that they signed. He signed a 4-year deal worth $30.25 million in December of 2013. In his 298 games with the Royals, slash line of 238, 269, 328, OPS plus of 63 in that time. He only had 8 home runs, and his Baseball Reference WAR was negative 0.6. It seemed like a good signing at the time. Non-production from Chris Getz for a bunch of years. They signed one of the top contact hitting second basemen in baseball, coming off a season where he hit 318 with the Tigers. Omar Infante did. Just a week into his Royals career, he was hit in the jaw with the pitch. Whether that affected his batting or age just caught up to him, he was never able to hit much after that. He was able to help them win a pennant and was great in the World Series against the Giants, hitting .318 with a home run, but one of the worst hitters in baseball the next season. And the Royals released him with a year and a half remaining on his deal. That was thanks to the friends at Royals Review on the Omar Infante contract. And to finish off the Central, we have the Minnesota Twins. Their deal: Ricky Nolasco, 4 years, $49 million with a team option for the 5th year. And I can tell you right now, he did not get that team option in the 5th year. Nolasco went 15-22 with a 5.44 ERA for the Twins after signing again his $49 million 4-year contract in 2014. Ended up being traded at the deadline in 2016. For that 2016 trade, the Twins traded Ricky Nolasco and Alex Meyer to the Angels for left-hander Hector Santiago and a prospect, Alan Busenitz. Pretty easy to say that this Ricky Nolasco deal did not work out at all for the Minnesota Twins. Now we go to the AL West, and we will begin with the Houston Astros. This is the easiest choice of all time. Jose Abreu is the worst contract the Houston Astros have given out. Former MVP signed a 3-year, $58 million ticket with the Astros and was released by the team in his 2nd season of that deal just last week. During his time with the Houston Astros, Jose Abreu hit .218 with a .275 on base percentage for an OPS plus of 73. He accumulated a grand total of negative 1.6 wins above replacement. Really, really good tenure for Jose Abreu. We go to LA and we have the Los Angeles Angels. Unfortunately, another easy answer from me here, and that's going to be Anthony Rendon. He has dealt with injury problems, so it's not like he could play this out and he was released after that. He has dealt with a ton of injuries, so maybe there's a chance he could figure it out, but he signed a 7-year deal. That 7-year deal was worth $245 million in December of 2019, and he has only played in 219 games for the Angels since the 2020 season began. He was really deserving of this contract at the time. Let's not get that twisted. He was an All-Star the year before, top 3 in NL MVP voting, coming off a World Series as well. It's been a disastrous contract with the Angels for both sides. Rendon hasn't been loved by the fans after that. Made a couple crazy comments that the people don't like. I think it's just been overall maybe one of the worst contracts that could be signed. Hasn't worked out for either side. Next, we head to the Oakland A's, and when we talk about the Oakland A's, it's usually about the money they do not give out to their players. So it's hard to find a really bad contract as of late. I had to do some research on what someone came up with was their worst contract because I was not watching Esteban Loaiza as an Oakland A. But Loaiza was given $21 million over 3 years after making his name with the White Sox Blue Jay before that as well. He lasted just 28 starts with the A's, registering a 4.62 ERA in that span. And after baseball, things also haven't gone so well for Esteban Loaiza. He has to serve a 3-year prison sentence for transportation and sale of narcotics. We head up the coast and we land in Seattle. I couldn't find a contract that I thought was horrifically bad, so I have to loop in an unfortunate Canadian here. In 2021, the Mariners signed James Paxton to a 1-year, $8.5 million contract. And in his first start of that season against the White Sox, he was removed after just 24 pitches. And then a couple days later, it was announced that Big Maple was going to need Tommy John surgery. So he got paid $8.5 million for 24 pitches. Seems pretty great for James Paxton, money per pitch wise, but you know, the Tommy John surgery wasn't great, and Seattle wish they could have that money back. I am sure James Paxton gets on this worst contracts list. Lastly, we have the Texas Rangers, Nolan Wrighton from a blog. This is what he came up with because I didn't see any that were too bad to the eye first look. The biggest loser from his blog that he came up with was Chan Ho Park and his deal that he signed in 2021, influenced by Alex Rodriguez. So Park became a free agent after the 2001 season, signed a 5-year, $65 million contract that made him the 6th highest paid pitcher in all of baseball at the time. He was brought in to be the ace that the Rangers were looking for, and he was nothing like that. The ballpark in Arlington was one of the best offensive parks in baseball, right next to Coors Field at the time. Jet streams had a huge impact, and balls would just fly in the outfield. In his 3.5 seasons with the team, he could never figure out how to be successful at home. He had a 6+ ERA at home in 2002 and 2004, and he never finished with a full season ERA under 5 in his time in Texas. He was then traded at the 2005 deadline. And again, thank you to Nolan Wrighton for that write-up. There it is, the worst AL contracts. I'm sure there's some more in there, so tell us who you think the worst contract is for your team. Thank you to FanDuel Canada for sponsoring the video, and we will see you guys tomorrow for Mustad.